"My husband told me he lost his job," he said sadly. "But hey, that might not be so bad. We can still turn things around. Just ignore that sneaky boss. We'll figure things out ourselves. I'm Sammy, by the way." The other day, I said yes, yes when the microwave beeped, and my daughter looked at me funny, saying, "Mom's talking to the microwave." It felt weird being caught off guard like that. But with gadgets like Alexa and Siri, talking to machines isn't unusual anymore. It was embarrassing because I didn't even realize I was doing it. But hey, compared to some of the really embarrassing moments I've had in the past, talking to the microwave isn't such a big deal. This happened about 15 years ago when I was working at a small but prestigious company. The company was known for its expertise in specialized tasks, like creating programs to keep computer systems safe. It had a good reputation with big companies, and its performance was solid. Back then, the internet wasn't as common as it is now, so there was a lot of potential for growth, especially in areas like security. People expected the company to keep doing well. During this time, I met Simon, who is now my husband. He was a colleague, and we eventually got married. But even before we tied the knot, I had to deal with unwanted attention from the company's president. I've always been seen as attractive, even from a young age, and I'd often got noticed by photographers for magazines when I was out and about. Unfortunately, that also meant I attracted the wrong kind of attention from some men, including the president. Because of that, I've never really liked my own looks. Even a simple good morning from me would be exaggerated by the president, who would say things like, "You're such a good girl," always greeting me with a smile. He'd brag about it to others in the company. The president was 48 years old at the time, bald, with what little hair he had left slicked down on his forehead. But he seemed content with his appearance and didn't seem bothered about fixing it. He wasn't very nice, and he treated employees he didn't like with arrogance, while being friendly to those who were useful to the company or those he found attractive. He had a bossy way about him, which created divisions among the staff, whether it was good or bad. His behavior made me feel uncomfortable, but since he was my boss, I had to find a way to get along with him. Dealing with a man who wrongly believed I was dependent on him because I reported to him for work was tricky. I tried to avoid getting too close to him to avoid any misunderstandings. However, when I announced my marriage to my husband, the president began persistently asking me out for meals. Even though we kept our relationship at work secret, people who knew about us knew. But the fact that the president increased his invitations at this time showed he hadn't realized I was married until then. It was just things like feeling his eyes on me or hearing from others that he liked me. I initially tried to handle it gracefully, but it became a problem when his invitations got more intense. He suggested going to fancy restaurants, drinking expensive wine he bought, and even going to bars with private rooms. He kept asking when I would go out with him alone, making things awkward and uncomfortable for me. Even after I kept saying no to his invitations, the president didn't stop. He thought I was playing hard to get and teasing him on purpose, calling me names like Little Devil. His invitations were so obvious, he just wanted to get me drunk and take advantage of me in private. It was clear it had nothing to do with work. If he suggested going to a busy park near a police station and asked me to drink water while licking salt, which I hated, I might have considered it as a work obligation, but ultimately, I wouldn't have gone. One day, I couldn't take it anymore. I told him straight out to leave me alone because it was bothering me. I had avoided saying this before because I didn't want him to realize I knew about his interest in me, which would complicate things even more. But that day, I was too stressed, and my true feelings slipped out. As expected, the president just laughed and tried to touch me. He said I knew all along and was teasing him on purpose. His touch made my skin crawl, and without thinking, I pushed him away and ran off. Originally, my husband was concerned about the president's behavior and suggested I quit my job. But I insisted on staying because I wanted to support my husband, who was the top technician in the company. He's working on a new system that could greatly improve our company's performance, and I wanted to be there to see it through. Switching companies after quitting wouldn't have made sense for me, so despite the uncomfortable situation with the president, I chose to stay. However, it was time to put an end to it. The next day, I handed in my resignation letter, addressing it to the president. I had already discussed everything with my husband the night before, and he strongly encouraged me to resign. So with determination, I confronted the president, but he didn't accept it. Instead, he tried to convince me to stay by offering higher pay and a better position. He even made weird suggestions like promoting me to be the president's wife, which made me uneasy. I told him I was married and tired of his advances, but he seemed to twist my words, implying that I secretly loved him. It was frustrating. I never saw him that way. I thought maybe he felt threatened by my husband and was trying to keep me close, but that conversation just made me more determined to leave. The president accepted my resignation, saying I shouldn't have to work as just an ordinary employee when I'm going to be the future president's wife. He took my letter and left the office. It was clear he didn't understand anything. Blaming my husband made no sense. But wait, isn't this unexpectedly lucky for both me and my husband? Just married, and now I'm out of a job. When my husband asked what was wrong, I smiled and said, "Well then, congratulations." I suggested to my husband that since he was developing a system to find suitable customers for the company, and without him, the data wouldn't be updated, maybe it was a good opportunity for us to start our own business. He was surprised at first, but then laughed and agreed, saying I was clever. We could work together again. After getting fired, my husband wasted no time. Within 30 days, just like the president said, we used our savings to start our own business. During this time, my husband reached out to the talented people from our old company, basically recruiting them to join us. The bald president, who didn't even know how to use a computer, often didn't understand the struggles we faced and would give us impossible tasks. So when my husband asked them to join our company where they'd be understood and valued, almost everyone agreed, except for the higher-ups the president favored. If I had stayed at the old company, I might have been stuck there too. Following my husband's lead, he developed a new and improved version of the system he'd been working on before. With his connections, he not only secured jobs, but also created 2 new security systems, selling them to other companies. In an industry with few competitors, companies naturally wanted the best products. So our workload quickly grew. Within 4 years, our company became the best in the business. Everyone at our company was thrilled with our success. Then, out of nowhere, the president showed up at our office one day. Reluctantly, my husband led him to his workspace, which also served as the president's office. Worried, I went along too. My husband asked the president what he wanted, and the president immediately bowed and apologized with tears in his eyes. He said he'd been watching us for the past few years and realized that I really didn't like him. He genuinely regretted his actions. The president explained that the previous company was in financial trouble, short-staffed, and making employees work long hours without paying them properly for overtime. At this point, I didn't really care about getting an apology. My husband is making more money now than he did at the old company, and he's increased the salaries of our employees. We're happy with where we are now, so the president's apology didn't matter to me. It felt like a waste of time. When my husband asked if the president had anything else to say, the president got off the sofa, sat on the floor, and begged. He pleaded for my husband to come back to the old company, saying that with him there, things would improve. But my husband calmly refused. He said that ever since he got fired, he's no longer an employee there and has a responsibility to protect the people at our own company, so he couldn't go back. The president kept pleading, even offering to step down and have his company merge with ours. But my husband said no. He explained that what the president did to me in the past was wrong and hurtful to female employees' morale. Nowadays, overworking is criticized, and actions like the president's are considered unacceptable. Back then, it might have been seen differently, but now it's clear it was wrong. He mentioned how victims were often silenced or blamed, and he couldn't forgive the president for what he did. The situation with overtime was different. Until then, it was common for companies to ignore labor laws and make employees work long hours. But as laws changed and people started seeing long hours as harmful, the president's actions could have serious consequences if reported. At first, he begged not to resign, but he eventually realized he couldn't stay as the head of the company. The president stepped down, and my husband took over, merging his company with ours. All the employees came with us, and we sorted out the unpaid overtime. Since our company was doing well, it was a relief. The president's company didn't pay much for overtime anyway, so the amount owed wasn't huge. We came out on top. When you suggested starting a business after I lost my job, I never imagined we'd grow so much that we'd surpass the president's company. I'd always believed in your abilities. Really? Or are you just trying to boost my ego? I teased my husband. No way. You caught me, he replied with a smile. As we talked about our journey as a couple, I felt genuinely relieved that everything had worked out so well. Later, it came out that someone leaked the conversations for the president's office, including his embarrassing actions towards me. This, along with the issue of unpaid overtime, made it to the local newspapers. It didn't make it to TV news because it's a small company, but more people read local papers than watch TV or read famous magazines. The president became a laughingstock in the community, and kids started playing a game called Playing President, where they pretended to flirt with a reluctant girl. It was embarrassing for him, and if he saw it, he'd probably feel even worse. He was divorced and had a teenage daughter. When she heard about the game, she seemed upset and ran home. Having a creepy father must be tough for a sensitive girl like her. It's like he's facing consequences for his own actions. Now, the president lost his company and his daughter, and he can't get a good job because he doesn't know how to use a computer. He's working as an office worker in a local factory, but he struggles with basic tasks. He's even serving tea to the female president there. It's quite a fall from his previous position. He used to order female tea servers around, but now he's the one serving tea. He probably never imagined he'd end up like this. The employees who joined our company from the president's old one find his downfall pretty amusing. They're not feeling sorry for him at all. Meanwhile, my husband and I have been blessed with 2 children. Our daughter is quite the chatterbox and loves teasing me when I get distracted during phone calls or talk to the microwave. She's cheeky but adorable. Our son, who's a year younger, seems to have a knack for computers like his dad. Even at his young age, he's already dabbling in creating small programs. So we think he has a bright future ahead of him. It would be great if he eventually took over the company. But right now, he's more interested in being a YouTuber, working for Uber Eats, or delivering pizzas. Wait, son, aren't there any other options? I often ask him. Despite the chaos of parenting, we cherish our happy family moments every day. So, how did you like our story? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more updates. See you in the next video.
From today, this is your home, so do your best alone. Due to the after effects of the accident, I lost my sight and became dependent on my family for support. One day, I was taken in a car by Jimmy, and suddenly I was dropped off and locked in a house. Outside the door, Jimmy's evil laughter echoed. My name is Brina, I'm 28 years old, and I work hard as a salesperson for a major company. My husband Jimmy, 27 years old, who is 1 year younger than me, worked at a client company. We met when I went to a company for a business deal, and Jimmy was the person in charge. Jimmy's father is the president of that company. And Jimmy, as the next president, holds a higher position with decision-making authority, despite being younger than me. After successfully concluding the deal, as I was about to leave, Jimmy confessed that he fell in love with me at first sight and aggressively pursued me. At first, I was rejecting Jimmy's approaches because he was my client. But through text exchanges and dinners, I gradually found myself attracted to Jimmy, who was reliable and had a strong core. After we started dating, our relationship deepened smoothly, and a year later, Jimmy proposed to me. Jimmy had become someone irreplaceable to me, so I decided to marry him. With the marriage, I quit my company and transferred to Jimmy's company. This was because Jimmy's father, Roland, the president of the client company, had always liked me and had treated me well even after we started dating. And he scouted me, saying, "If you got married to Jimmy, please join us." And he scouted me, saying, "If you got married to Jimmy, please join us." I was grateful for the offer and accepted it, securing a good position at the new company. As a working wife, I was very busy with work and household chores, but Jimmy, being a supportive husband, believed in sharing household responsibilities. I led a fulfilling life despite being busy. Jimmy and I lived in an apartment about a 10-minute drive away from his parents' house. Not only Roland but also my mother-in-law, Cereza, was a very kind person, and we got along very well, going camping together whenever we had time. One day, on my way home from work, Cereza asked me to do some shopping, which I gladly accepted. As I was driving home after buying the items, I was suddenly hit by a strong impact and lost consciousness. When I regained consciousness, I found that my vision was completely dark even though my eyes were open. A man's voice explained the situation in front of me. "Brina, are you awake? Please stay calm and listen, I'm a doctor. You were involved in a car accident and were brought to this hospital unconscious." I told the doctor that I couldn't see anything and my vision was dark. He explained that my temporary loss of vision was due to the shock of the accident and that it would probably return in about 2 months. At first, I was confused by the doctor's explanation, but I gradually accepted it and calmed down when my in-laws visited me at the hospital. They were very worried, especially Cereza, who blamed herself and apologized to me because she is the one who asked me to do some shopping. I comforted Cereza, assuring her that my vision loss was temporary and that there were no other major issues. Although Jimmy was too busy to visit, he was very worried and sent me daily voice messages and calls since I couldn't read texts. "Brina, are you okay? I can't visit because of work, but I'm always thinking about you." Supported by Jimmy's warm words, I managed to stay strong and not succumb to the fear of losing my sight. 3 days later, I was discharged from the hospital, and my life with the support of Jimmy and my in-laws began. During the day, Cereza would come over every morning before Jimmy went to work, and she would support me in various ways until he returned. Given the obligations at her own home, she stayed until 8 p.m., which was more than enough. However, even though it wasn't a busy season, Jimmy's return time kept getting later, and he often didn't make it back by 8 p.m. Moreover, even after coming home, he would stay in another room, constantly working on something. If I needed help, I would call him and he would come, but as soon as he was done, he would quickly leave me again. With my vision dark and my anxiety growing, I asked him, "Hey, you haven't been home much lately. Are you busy?" In an irritated voice. "I'm doing your sales job in addition to my own," he replied. Jimmy had to handle work for both of us, which meant overtime wasn't enough, and he had to continue working even after coming home. Hearing that, all I could do was thank him, considering I was on sick leave. After that conversation, the frequency of our conversation gradually lessened. When I talked to Cereza about it, she said, "That's Roland's fault for distributing the work like that," and promised to talk to him. She told me not to worry when I apologized repeatedly, which only made me feel more grateful and determined to repay her kindness someday. One day, Jimmy approached me and said he wanted my advice about work. "Hey, I had this issue at work. What do you think I should do?" Feeling happy that Jimmy was finally asking for my help, I listened carefully and responded kindly. His voice seemed brighter, and I was delighted to have been able to meet his expectations. The next day, Jimmy told me he had to work on the weekend, so I decided to spend the day at my in-laws' house. Although it's only a 10-minute drive, it was a significant burden for her to continue the routine of coming early in the morning to support someone else's household and returning home at night. Cereza would come every day to support, as she thought I would be anxious spending a whole day at my in-laws' house. So, when she said that she wanted me to come if possible, I immediately agreed. I felt bad about always being taken care of and hoped to reduce Roland's workload, and I agreed to go with Jimmy. Jimmy was in an especially good mood as he drove, and it felt like the 10 minutes felt like a second. However, when he said it hadn't even been 5 minutes, I realized that being unable to see made it hard to gauge the passage of time. After 20 and then 30 minutes, I asked him again, and finally, the car stopped. He helped me out of the car, but the ground felt different from usual. There was a strong scent of greenery, but my in-laws' house didn't have that many plants or flowers. Most notably, I couldn't hear the voices of my in-laws, which made me feel uneasy. Just as I was about to call out to Jimmy, he said, "From today, this is your home. Do your best." And I heard the door slam shut loudly. "Wait!" I fell to my knees, then stood up and turned around, extending my hands. Shuffling my feet, I slowly moved until I reached a large door. Whether I pushed, pulled, or tried to slide it sideways, it didn't budge at all. Desperately, I pounded on the door, and I could hear Jimmy's laughter from outside. "This is an empty house deep in the mountains where no one lives. Oh, and I locked the front door for you, so no animals will get in. Feel free to relax." I was stunned into silence by Jimmy's words. Hearing footsteps and the sound of a car door, I panicked and shouted as loudly as I could. "Wait! Don't go! Please, I'm begging you!" No matter how frantically I pounded on the door, there was no response. Then I heard the car engine start and quickly fade away. I had been abandoned in the mountains. Fear slowly crept up on me as I realized this. I reached into the pocket of my pants only to find that I didn't have my smartphone or anything else. Everything was in my bag, which I had given to Jimmy to carry. Even though I knew I could unlock the door from the inside, the thought of what would happen afterward filled me with anxiety. If this really was deep in the mountains, I would only get lost if I went outside. I couldn't imagine there being a public phone in the mountains, and even if there was, I wouldn't be able to find it. No matter how much I thought about what to do, there was no solution. What if only I had my smartphone? What if only I could see? What if only someone was here with me? As these what-ifs filled my mind, I reached my breaking point. "Is anybody there? Please, help me!" Maybe this wasn't really deep in the mountains and someone was just outside. Clinging to that faint hope, I continued to pound on the door and scream for help. There might be a landline phone inside the house, but since it was an empty house, it might not be connected. And if I went looking for it and couldn't find my way back to the front door, it would be even worse. That's why I couldn't move carelessly. How many hours had passed? We had left early in the morning, but it felt like ages had gone by. My throat was painfully dry from all the shouting and crying. My hands hurt just from having pounded on the door so much. Just then, I heard the sound of the front door unlocking. Realizing this might be my only chance to get out, I summoned the last of my strength and shouted, "Someone! Please, help me!" The next day, when Jimmy arrived at the office, he found Roland and 4 men standing in his way. "What's going on, Dad? And who are these people?" "They're police officers." "You know why they're here, don't you?" Jimmy's face twitched as he looked at the officers. "I didn't do anything wrong." I mean, nothing that would involve the police. Are you serious, you foolish son? Roland's furious voice made Jimmy involuntarily step back. One of the officers stepped forward to close the distance. Your wife was found inside my house. She said her husband abandoned her there. Do you seriously think leaving your blind wife alone in a deserted house isn't a crime? Jimmy looked at the man with a puzzled expression. You left Brina in Morris's house. That house used to belong to his parents, and now Maurice occasionally returns to maintain it. He happened to come back yesterday. As it turned out, the sound I had heard was Maurice unlocking the house. Surprised by the sound of someone's voice in what he believed to be an empty house, Maurice had quickly unlocked the front door. He discovered I was locked inside with a padlock on the door. Seeing my condition, Maurice rushed me to the hospital, learned from me that Jimmy had abandoned and locked me up, and then reported it to the police. Since I managed to contact Cereza, Roland was informed as well. Unable to reach Jimmy, they waited for him to show up at work this morning. I was told by your wife that you abandoned her at Morris's house. Is that not true? It's not true. She disappeared somewhere yesterday morning, and I couldn't find her. If your blind wife went missing, you'd be more frantic. You wouldn't calmly show up at work after a whole day. Roland, seething with anger, watched as Jimmy turned pale and looked around nervously. Jimmy muttered under his breath. There's no evidence. Maurice responded calmly. Actually, there is evidence. We have security cameras installed at my house. The footage clearly shows you pushing your wife into the house. Sweat started to form on Jimmy's forehead as he changed his stance, folding his arms and glaring defiantly at them. Come to think of it, I might have left my wife there. But is that really so wrong? This is a private matter between husband and wife. The police shouldn't interfere. Such a foolish statement was quietly dismissed by the officer. First of all, you trespassed on someone else's property, which is breaking and entering. And abandoning a spouse who cannot see may be classified as neglect of a dependent. Understanding the gravity of the situation, Jimmy started to panic. He tried to run but was immediately restrained by the officers. They informed him that they would take him to the station for questioning. Jimmy resisted violently, striking the officers and kicking the patrol car, leading to his arrest. From the hospital where I was undergoing observation and at my in-laws' house, I heard from Cereza about Jimmy's behavior. Apparently, he showed no signs of remorse. During the interrogation, Jimmy confessed that his actions were driven by his frustration at my higher recognition compared to his. Initially, Jimmy had been genuinely happy to have me working at Roland's company. However, as I gained more respect and trust from Roland and other employees, he began to feel marginalized. I'm the son. I'm supposed to be the next president. Jimmy harbored resentment as he took on more responsibilities during my leave, aiming to boost his image as both a kind husband and a competent employee. Yet, overwhelmed by the workload, he felt stressed by having a dependent wife at home. Apparently, he had been going out drinking without concern during those days. Even when he sought my advice for work-related issues, it felt humiliating to him. Gradually, he began to see me as an obstacle both as a wife and a colleague. Thus, Jimmy concocted a bizarre plan to abandon me in an isolated house, thinking the fear would make me more submissive to him. Roland explained that while Jimmy and Maurice worked at the same company, they were neither in the same department nor particularly close. The reason Jimmy had Maurice's house key was that he had stolen and duplicated it. Roland and Maurice had a strong relationship, and Maurice had shared his plans to leave the company to care for his parents. Maurice mentioned that he occasionally visited the house in the mountains, as his parents were reluctant to sell it. Jimmy overheard this and subsequently stole the key from Maurice's locker, duplicating it before returning the original. After Maurice moved with his parents, Jimmy began using the house as a personal retreat. Maurice discovered traces of someone being in the house during one of his visits, prompting him to install security cameras. He had recently returned to convince his parents to sell the house and sort through the remaining belongings, which led to him discovering me crying inside. Despite Jimmy's defiant attitude during police questioning, his crimes were serious. While it was unclear how long Jimmy intended to leave me, it seemed he planned to abandon me for several days. Considering he had gone to work as usual that day, he might have intended to check on me that night at the earliest. Had Maurice not arrived at the house in time, my blindness could have resulted in life-threatening consequences. Jimmy, who failed to grasp the severity of his actions, was almost certainly facing prison time. During the time Jimmy's trial was ongoing, I filed for divorce and requested compensation through a divorce lawsuit. With the help of a lawyer, the divorce was successfully finalized. Disgusted by Jimmy's actions, my in-laws decided to terminate his employment with immediate effect and sent him a letter in prison announcing that they were severing all ties with him. Afterwards, I regained my eyesight and moved to a town far away from where I used to live. My in-laws, concerned that Jimmy might return if they stayed at their old house, decided to move to the same town as me. They expressed deep regret for what had happened and assured me that I was free to live my life as I wished now that I was divorced. However, I was grateful to my in-laws and, having lost my own parents, I wanted to live close to them. They welcomed this decision, and now we live in close proximity to each other. Roland realized that relocating the company was not a viable solution. Even if they moved, anyone could find the new location through an internet search, so it would not ensure complete separation from Jimmy. Therefore, he decided to step down as CEO and pass the position to a capable non-family employee. Roland still occasionally visits the company and has started a new business venture he had been planning for some time. I was rehired by Roland's company and now enjoy a fulfilling life, engaged in new endeavors in my new home. Boomers ruin the taste of food. Go home. A woman dressed in a beautiful gown sneers as she splashes my mom with a hot toddy whiskey. My mom's arms and neck, drenched in whiskey, turn bright red. Maybe we should go home. My mom mutters a single phrase, stands up from her seat, gathers her belongings, and exits the private room at the restaurant. The woman who threw the whiskey at my mom laughs in an amusing manner, seemingly unaware that she has just stepped on a massive landmine. I hope she doesn't end up regretting it later. While sympathizing with my mom in my heart, I chase after her. My name is Jennifer, a 45-year-old nurse working at Williams General Hospital. I live with my slightly cheeky but adorable children and my kind husband. On this day, I was rushing to my destination while checking the time on the watch strapped to my wrist. It was just past 7 p.m. Normally, I would still be at the hospital at this time. However, today is a special day for me, so I asked someone who was available to switch shifts with me. All right, at this pace, I should make it in time. As I turn the corner, careful not to bump into any passers-by, my destination store comes into view. Seeing it, my expression naturally softens. Today is the day we celebrate my mom, Betty's, 70th birthday. Her actual birthday is still a ways off, but since we weren't sure if our schedules would align on the day of, we decided to celebrate today when both of our schedules matched up. I had been adjusting my schedule for the past few months in preparation for today and had carefully planned out how we would celebrate. My mom is not yet near the store. Relieved, I slow my pace and walk towards the store. Looks like she isn't here yet. That's good. I lost my dad in an accident when I was still in elementary school. Since then, my mom has been working hard to raise me well on her own while juggling her job and child-rearing. Even through the eyes of me as a child, my mom looked completely exhausted and painful right after losing dad. She always put on a brave face in front of me, which made it all the more so. Seeing my mom like that, I decided to pursue a career as a nurse. I wanted to become someone who could be there for like my mom, of course, but also for others who were carrying similar sorrows, even if only a little bit. That's what I thought. I hope she'll be happy. There are several gifts for her in the bag I have slung over my shoulder. As I head towards the store, imagining her reaction when she opens them, the couple walking in front of me catches my attention. They look to be in their early to mid-20s. I mean, Sarah looks seriously beautiful today, don't you think? Right? I wore it as a rehearsal for the wedding ceremony. I need to get a little used to wearing a dress, you know? They walk with their arms intertwined, their footsteps almost dancing. Seeing them from behind, they look so drunk that I almost think their footing is unsteady. The man is wearing a suit, while the girl called Sarah is wearing a beautiful dress. If she's having a wedding ceremony, she must be planning to wear the dress for the occasion. They seem to get along quite well, and I hope they stay on good terms forever. As I'm looking at the couple with a smile, Sarah turns around to look at me. Huh? What's with this old lady? Hey, Daniel, I think this person is glaring at me. With a cute face contorted in displeasure, she tells her boyfriend beside her. Then, the boyfriend who seems to be named Daniel turns around and glares at me. Huh? Hey, what's up? You got a problem? What? No, that's not it. It's just that she was so beautiful, I couldn't help but look. I'm sorry. Apparently, I was staring too much. I wasn't looking because I had a problem with them, but if I made them uncomfortable, I have to apologize for my rudeness. I sincerely apologized for giving them an impolite look. At that, Daniel immediately raises the corners of his mouth in a good mood, and Sarah puts one hand on her cheek, looking not entirely displeased, and laughs. Well, I can't be looking all tired and worn out like you, old woman. Yeah, totally. Don't compare you to my girlfriend, she's super young and cute. If you think I'm pretty, why don't you take care of your skin a bit? I can tell your skin is in bad shape even without bright lighting. Hearing their words, I immediately wanted to take back what I said just a little while ago. They may be cute on the outside, but they're not at all cute on the inside. But since I started this, I'll retreat without saying anything more. Without further engaging with the two who started flirting again without caring about people's eyes, I quietly move away from them, slip through the side, and hurry towards the front of the store. Geez, that was a horrible thing to say. I'm glad my mom wasn't here. Although I had an unexpected mishap, seeing the front of my destination store, my troubled heart quickly settles down. The place I chose today is a high-end restaurant that's often talked about on the internet and social media. This restaurant is so popular that it was very difficult to make a reservation. That's why I had to plan months in advance. This is it, right? Isn't this place way fancier than it looks on social media? Then, I hear the voice I heard earlier, right behind me. Turning around timidly, there they are, Daniel and Sarah, looking up at the restaurant excitedly, as expected. Fortunately, neither of them notice me, and they quickly go inside the restaurant. Seeing that, a sigh of relief naturally escapes my mouth. If possible, I'd rather not get involved with them anymore. Jennifer. Sorry, did you wait long? Oh, Mom. I just got here too. As I'm feeling frustrated, this time I hear a familiar voice. Turning around, I see my mom waving her hand and running up to me. I can't say anything about others, but my mom also looks quite terrible, not much better than me. We both just got off work so it can't be helped, but her hair isn't even set and her clothes are a hastily put together simple suit. It's not a pretty look, to say the least. But she doesn't seem to care about that at all, and she's smiling happily anyway. Maybe it's because she ran all the way here, or maybe she's that happy, but her cheeks are slightly flushed. I'm so happy that you are celebrating my 70th birthday for me. And at such a fancy place. But is Robert okay with it? Did you get his permission? Of course. He sends his regards too, and I have a gift from him as well. I'll give it to you later. Oh, how wonderful. Jennifer, you really married a wonderful husband, didn't you? I can't thank Robert and his parents enough. Robert is my husband. He was actually planning to celebrate my mom's 70th birthday with us, but he had work he couldn't get out of, so we decided to do it another time. There's a lot to catch up on, but it's almost time for our reservation. We decided to continue our conversation inside the restaurant.
Hey! I didn't hear about that.
As my mom and I enter the restaurant, Sarah and Daniel are making a huge fuss at the entrance. They're ganging up on a female staff member, apparently trying to pick a fight.
So, I'm terribly sorry, but our restaurant prioritizes customers with reservations. So if you don't have a reservation, we'll have to ask you to leave or wait.
What? There's an empty table there, in the back, and over there. Just seat us at an empty table. We're customers, customers.
I apologize. All the tables currently available are reserved for customers with reservations.
Apparently, that couple didn't make a reservation. They seemed to know that this restaurant was popular, but they must have missed the part about reservations being prioritized. It's written in large, eye-catching red letters on the sign in front of the store, on social media, and even on the restaurant's website. It's a restaurant that's always fully booked with reservations, so there's no way they'd be smoothly guided inside if they showed up without a reservation. My mom and I approached them, partly to help the troubled staff member.
Excuse me, I have a reservation for 8 p.m. under Johnson.
Oh, yes. Ms. Johnson, 4-2, right? We've been expecting you. Right this way, please.
When I spoke up, the female staff member who was being harassed looked relieved and smiled. She tried to guide us to a private room in the back in a practiced manner, but...
Hey, wait a minute. What? You're prioritizing customers who came in after us? We're the customers who arrived first,
That couple wouldn't let us pass quietly. I think the staff's explanation earlier covered everything, but ridiculously, they still don't seem to accept it. 2 male staff members hurry out from the back of the restaurant, looking flustered, but even then, Sarah and Daniel don't back down at all. Instead, they start glaring at my mom and me, their eyes trailing from the top of our heads to the tips of our toes.
You should go to a restaurant more suited to your status, don't you think? Aren't you embarrassed to come to a high-end restaurant dressed so shabbily?
Yeah. Don't you know it's rude not to dress appropriately for the restaurant?
Oh, wait, did you think that was dressing up?
And today is your once-in-a-lifetime splurge or something?
Give it up.
Poor people will never understand the value of haute cuisine anyway.
I had already confirmed in advance that this restaurant doesn't have a required dress code. I wonder if this couple came dressed in fancy suits and dresses without knowing that.
Hey, restaurant staff. We're elite employees at Martinez Bank. We have lots of money. Between these poor people and us wealthy elites, who would you rather have as customers? Who can spend more money at your restaurant? You don't even have to think about it, right?
Martinez Bank is a large bank with branches nationwide. Their headquarters is near this restaurant. They must work at that main branch. Just hearing that, they certainly sound elite, but their behavior is far from elite. The staff members exchanged troubled glances, but the staff member who first helped us tried her best to smile as she led us to the back.
Ms. Johnson, please come this way. I apologize for any unpleasantness.
No, we're fine.
Yes, that's right. Please don't worry about it. As we head towards the back, I can still hear Sarah's angry voice shouting, "Wait!" But we decide not to engage. If we ignore her, she'll probably give up eventually. I hope that's the case. My mom and I both respond with a smile to the staff member who apologizes profusely, true to her word. The staff at this restaurant have done nothing wrong. The private room we're led to is a calm space, gently illuminated by warm-colored lights. My mom and I sit across from each other with a table between us. A lot has happened before we got here, but we can finally take a breather.
There sure are all kinds of people out there. I wonder if the staff will be okay.
Yeah. If they cause too much of a scene, the staff might consider calling the police, so I think it'll be fine. But our celebration was disrupted, even though it's a special occasion.
That doesn't really matter.
She didn't seem particularly offended. My mom is always like this. She generally dislikes conflict and isn't the type to get angry easily. No matter what people say to her, she always settles things amicably. If she isn't in a bad mood, it's probably not a good idea to dwell on this topic too much. Today is a special celebration, after all. Before the food is brought out, I take 2 gifts out of my bag and hand them to my mom.
Here. This is from me and Robert, and the other one is from the kids to their grandma. Oh my!
To receive presents from Jennifer and her wonderful husband, and from my adorable grandchildren. I'm the happiest grandma in the world right now. Saying that, my mom's face breaks into a truly delighted smile as she accepts the 2 gifts. Seeing her like that, the one giving the presents ends up feeling even happier. So much so that the complicated feelings I had in my heart just a little while ago vanish completely. About 2 hours pass after that. My mom's and my stomachs are completely satisfied. As expected of a popular restaurant, not only was the taste excellent, but the appearance of the dishes was also magnificent. We ordered a course meal centered around seafood this time, but it makes me want to come back and try their meat course next time. As we're slowly savoring the dessert that was served last, I hear lively voices coming from outside the private room.
Unbelievable! Normally, elites should be given top priority, right? I was looking forward to this high-end restaurant, but prioritizing poor people over us put me in the worst mood.
It was the troublesome couple from before. Apparently, a table finally opened up for them. The footsteps pass by the private room we're in and seem to enter the one next to us.
If you don't want a scathing review, hurry up and bring out the food. Menu? You decide that for us. We elite customers have been kept waiting for so long. It's only common sense to make an apology dish and bring it out.
Even though it's a private room, I can clearly hear Sarah's angry voice since it's the room next door. However, I don't hear the voices of the staff or Daniel at all. Just from that, I can tell how loudly she must be yelling. This ruins the pleasant mood. Maybe we should finish our dessert quickly and go home. Just as I'm about to say that to my mom, I hear footsteps again. Footsteps that seem to be in a hurry.
I knew it! You were here! You poor mother and daughter! How dare you cut in line earlier?
Well, what?
Cut in line? We had a reservation, so...
It was Sarah. She rudely kicks over the screen at the entrance of the private room, folds her arms in front of her chest, and looks around the interior. Then, just like earlier, she laughs through her nose with a ha. Quite an expensive-looking private room. No wonder you're spending money on things beyond your means, working yourself to the bone until you look so haggard. Sarah calls herself an elite over and over, so she must have a lot of pride. That's probably why she can't stand the fact that we, who look shabby and poor in her eyes, got to enjoy our meal at this restaurant before her. So much so that she had to come all the way here just to make a snide remark. The staff tries to admonish Sarah, but Daniel dismisses it with a, "Hey, hold on a sec. If we stay at the restaurant any longer, we'll only cause more trouble for them. We only have dessert left anyway, so maybe we should eat quickly and leave early."
Young lady, you may certainly be an elite, but it's better not to loudly proclaim where you work.
Huh? What, are you so dazzled by my elite status that you can't help but realize how shabby you are?
No, that's not it. You may be too young to think deeply about it, but what you're doing is...
Before my mom can finish her sentence, Sarah snatches a glass from a nearby staff member's tray and, unbelievably, throws its contents at her. The steaming liquid is whiskey, a hot toddy.
Ah, hot. Are you okay?
I hurriedly stand up with a napkin in hand and rush to her side. The hot whiskey soaks my mom's shoulders, chest, and upper arms, and my mom lets out a scream-like cry as she takes off her suit jacket and pulls up her dress shirt. The presents we sent for her 70th birthday celebration, even though they're wrapped, are completely drenched. Seeing that, Sarah and Daniel. Whiskey is supposed to have an exorcising effect. Isn't that great? The god of poverty that's been haunting you is probably gone now, right? You should be thanking me.
There's always boomers who love to lecture young people like us.
I can't tell what her skin looks like since she can't take off her shirt, but the part peeking out from under her rolled-up sleeves is bright red. Unable to suppress my rising anger, I glare at the couple who are laughing gleefully. Then Sarah laughs mockingly again.
Hee hee.
And spits out.
Food tastes bad when boomers are around. Go home.
At her unbelievably horrible words and actions, I'm about to raise my voice in anger, but my mom's hand stops me. My mom doesn't say anything more. She only mutters a single phrase. Maybe we should go home. Hearing that mutter, both Sarah and Daniel point at my mom and laugh loudly. However, my mom doesn't even engage with that, quickly gathers her things, slips past the two of them, and leaves the private room.
Excuse me.
The bill, please. I hurriedly chase after her. Ahead, I see the staff members turning pale at the sight of my mom completely drenched. Behind me, I can still hear Sarah and Daniel's grating laughter. But I know. The more good-natured someone usually is, the more terrifying they are when they get angry, to the point where it's no joke. My mom was no exception to that. The next day, as I'm working while holding complicated feelings about last night's commotion, a colleague nurse comes to call me.
Miss Johnson, the doctors are asking for you. Huh? Me? Did I mess something up?
I'm having trouble switching gears today, so maybe I made a mistake. But my colleague shakes her head and blinks in confusion.
No, it doesn't seem to be anything like that. Apparently, a guest is here, and the hospital director has been called too.
The hospital director? Okay, I'll go check it out. Though I raise a question mark, I leave things there to my colleague and head to the reception room in the back of the hospital. If there's a visitor, they're usually dealt with in the reception room. Then, I see various doctors gathered around the reception room, and there's an unsettling atmosphere.
Oh, Miss Johnson, we've been waiting for you. Come on in. Well, what happened?
The CEO of Martinez Bank is here, saying he has something to discuss with you. Martinez Bank. Just hearing that name, complicated feelings seep into my heart again. However, if the CEO is here, last night's incident must have already been reported. Watched by the various doctors, I open the door to the reception room and step inside. Inside, there's a man who seems to be the CEO of Martinez Bank and the couple from last night. The latter two have extremely awkward expressions. Hospital director, what's all the fuss about? After confirming their presence, I call out to the hospital director. Then, well, who knows? In the middle of this busy time, they suddenly barged in. I only contacted them to cancel my bank account, though. The hospital director, my mom, replies calmly.
No way. The old lady from yesterday. No, that woman is actually the hospital director of the general hospital. Last night, I am truly sorry.
That's right. My mom is the hospital director of Williams General Hospital. The reason my mom and I are so exhausted after work is that we're spending such busy days. We hardly have the time to care about our appearance. Last night was supposed to be a 70th birthday celebration as well as my moment of peace. But it was ruined in the worst way possible. I could painfully understand my mom's feelings when she contacted them to cancel her bank account.
Ms. Jones, I am deeply sorry for this incident. It was my lack of management.
Then, Mr. Davis, the CEO of Martinez Bank, apologizes profusely. Honestly, even if someone who wasn't involved in last night's incident apologizes, it doesn't make me feel any better. That wasn't a work-related issue, but a commotion caused by individuals. My mom seems to feel the same way, and her profile shows none of her usual gentle demeanor, only coldness. But there's clear anger in her eyes, piercing straight through Daniel and Sarah behind Mr. Davis, not him.
Young lady, do you understand the meaning of what I said yesterday? Huh?
Caught off guard by the sudden question, Sarah lets out an unpleasant voice either because she wasn't paying attention or because she hasn't reflected. Hearing that, Mr. Davis and Daniel put their raised index fingers to their lips, desperately trying to silence Sarah.
Martinez Bank is a large bank with branches nationwide, so you probably couldn't resist boasting about working at the headquarters. But if it becomes known that they employ someone with poor conduct like you, it will lead to a decline in the bank's image. Wah! In fact, thanks to you too, I've decided to cancel my Martinez Bank account. If you hadn't loudly proclaimed where you work, I wouldn't have been able to figure it out.
At my mom's barrage of words, Sarah's face turns bright red with anger. She waves her fists in rage, but Daniel, in contrast to Sarah, is turning pale as he tries to calm her down.
Hurry up and apologize. CEO, this is terrible. Normally, shouldn't you be protecting your employees in a situation like this? Listening only to the other side's story and unilaterally treating me as the villain. You fool! You even injured Ms. Jones, and you still claim you did nothing wrong?
My mom's skin, which had hot toddy whiskey thrown on it, was burned, though not severely. Even now, fresh bandages peek out from her neck and wrists, not hidden by her white coat.
But these two cut in line, you know? Sure, I admit it was wrong of me to get physical, but cutting in line is.
Still, Sarah insists on her innocence. Next to her, Daniel, still pale, is flustered.
Even though you simply didn't make a reservation, you insist that we cut in line. In that case, shall we contact the restaurant from last night and have them confirm whether we had a reservation? If Mr. Davis sees that, I think he'll understand which one of us is being absurd. Ugh!
Sarah understands it clearly in her head. That she and Daniel, who didn't make a reservation, are 100% at fault. But what prevents her from admitting it is probably the pride within Sarah that's far higher than any mountain around.
Why do I have to apologize to these people? Just because you're doctors doesn't mean you can act all high and mighty. Hey! Sarah, if you're making the CEO apologize like this, you must be a fairly big customer. But we have plenty of famous corporate clients. Losing one or two won't be much of a blow.
At Sarah's words, stubbornly refusing to apologize, the air in the room felt like it froze. After a few beats of silence, my mom glances at me for my moment. You heard her, Jennifer. What will you do?
I'm sorry, Mr. Davis, but since it doesn't seem like it'll be much of a blow, I think I'll cancel my bank account too. Let's see. The hospital director and I each have bank accounts of about $5 billion, so it would be around $10 billion total, right?
At my words, Sarah is shocked, her face turning pale. I can see the corners of her mouth twitching slightly.
$10 billion? Why do you have that much money?
The reason we have that much money is due to the multiple life insurance policies my dad had taken out in case something happened to him. The hospital director of Williams General Hospital was originally my dad. In other words, both of my parents are doctors. Because Dad had taken out multiple life insurance policies while he was alive, after his death, my mom and I received more money than we could spend in a lifetime. Banks profit by taking the money deposited by many customers and lending it out to others. Even if it's the main branch, what would happen if $10 billion suddenly left? It's not hard to imagine, even without thinking too deeply. Sarah looks like she can barely stand, taking a few steps back. She finally seems to understand the gravity of the situation. Clearly too late.
Come on, Sarah! Apologize! Hurry up and apologize!
Daniel is already more than half in tears. However, when Daniel urges Sarah to apologize, she grabs both of his shoulders and confronts him.
When you get down to it, it's your fault. If you hadn't suggested going to that restaurant, this wouldn't have happened. Daniel, you apologize deeply or whatever, and make amends. I already apologized. Besides, the one who was always nagging about wanting to try that restaurant was you, Sarah. Then why was it yesterday? Why didn't you make a reservation? You can't even perfectly escort a girl, you're the worst. If you're going to be a husband, you should properly protect your wife, you incompetent fool.
Then they start blaming each other. I don't know if Daniel understood the gravity of the situation when he came here, or if he's simply timid. I can't tell which, but at least he offered words of apology. Whether we forgive him or not is a separate matter. But from Sarah, I haven't received a single proper apology. In everything leading up to this point, she didn't even show a hint of feeling sorry. I absolutely cannot forgive that.
Enough already!
Mr. Davis shouts angrily, seeing the two of them start arguing at a place they came to apologize. They're both surprised by that, flinching their shoulders and shutting up.
Do you understand the situation you're in? Do you comprehend why you came here? If you were sincerely and wholeheartedly apologizing, that would be one thing, but to engage in such an unsightly dispute. But CEO, I'm not at fault. The one responsible for this incident is Daniel. I was just invited to dinner by him, and don't be ridiculous. The one who barged into another private room to make snide remarks and poured whiskey on the hospital director was all you, Sarah.
Even though they seemed so close last night, apparently there was no deep trust or affection there. If they truly cared for each other, normally one of them would cleanly take responsibility. But all they're doing now is just shifting the blame for their own wrongdoings onto each other. There wasn't even a shred of affection to be seen.
Enough! This is a serious matter concerning trust. I can't deal with people who cause such a commotion outside any longer. You both are fired.
Fired?
No way.
Finally, Mr. Davis's anger seems to have exploded. Sarah and Daniel are literally left speechless, only able to open their mouths. My mom, who had been watching the series of exchanges, sighs as if tired, then lifts the hem of her white coat to reveal her bandaged arm.
I went to another hospital this morning to get examined and obtain a medical certificate. You're such a child. If I had this hospital issue the certificate, I might be accused of trying to frame you. We will be filing a police report for this incident, so, Sarah, keep that in mind.
Police report.
Well, what's that? Sarah's action of throwing whiskey and causing burns is a clear case of assault. But the hospital director, no, my mom, if she had seen even a hint of remorse in Sarah or a sincere apology, I don't think she would have gone this far.
My mom is generally a gentle person. But Sarah stubbornly refused to admit she was wrong. And even when cornered like that, she didn't show a single sign of remorse. Like me, my mom probably couldn't forgive that. At the ominous words police and police report, Sarah's eyes fill with tears as she opens and closes her mouth. She seems to be trying to say something, but the words won't come out.
Just so you know, we won't agree to a settlement.
Huh? Sarah doesn't seem to understand what that means, but my mom apparently has no desire to talk further. She stands up from her chair and immediately leaves the reception room. Jennifer, I'm truly sorry about this. I don't know how to apologize.
No, Mr. Davis has nothing to apologize for. And even though my mom said that, I don't think she'll actually go through with canceling the bank account, so please don't worry.
Mr. Davis sighs as if tired, walks up to me, and apologizes. I hurriedly shake my head, lowering my voice so Sarah and the others can't hear the second half. Then, clear relief seeps into his face.
Hey! Daniel! What's the police? What's a police report? Did I do something that bad? How should I know? I'm done with you. Whatever happens to you is none of my business. No. Don't say that. Hey! What should I do? Hey, I'm talking to you.
Fired and abandoned even by Daniel, Sarah sinks to the floor powerlessly.
All right. I think we're done here. The hospital isn't free, so please leave soon. Wait. Call the hospital director. Call her one more time. I'll apologize properly. I'll give a deep apology or whatever.
As I approach Sarah to ask her to leave, she clings to me. Her face is desperate. If she was going to panic this much now, she should have just apologized meekly from the start. I let out a small sigh and shake my head.
Unfortunately, the hospital director is not here for free. She's in a position where she's so busy every day to the point of exhaustion that Sarah would blurt out that she looks shabby. Sarah! You even spat out such abuse.
When I repeat the words said at the restaurant last night, Sarah makes an awkward expression. Reacting to that, Mr. Davis's anger, which had settled down once, begins to build up again.
We're in a position where people's lives are entrusted to us. We do get exhausted. There are so many times where a minute or a second can mean life or death. I can't afford to care that much about ourselves. But I've never once thought I looked shabby. That's just because I didn't know your occupation. It just slipped out. I didn't mean any harm. So you think it's okay to mock non-medical professionals as shabby? I do think Sarah should be prosecuted after all. She's still young. If she reflects in prison, she might gain some common sense.
Even if a police report is submitted, if there's no prosecution, it won't result in a criminal record. Also, if a settlement is reached, cases often end up not being prosecuted. However, my mom has already declared she won't agree to a settlement. If the victim doesn't agree to a settlement, the criminal penalty can't be reduced, and there's a high probability of prosecution. In the first place, my mom and I have more than enough money. so even if we're offered settlement money, it won't lead to us being satisfied. There are times when settlement money won't be accepted, but I have no obligation to tell Sarah that.
No, I don't want to go to prison. Do something, I'll apologize.
Sarah says that and cries loudly, but Mr. Davis, Daniel, and no one stood by Sarah's side. The one I want to stand by isn't someone with no common sense like her. Afterwards, my mom formally filed a police report. Sarah's dad apparently runs a company as the president, and she cried to him. But not only did she not receive help, she got scolded harshly. Why? Because Sarah's dad is one of my mom's patients.
How could you do that to Ms. Jones?
He was furious, and I heard that was the trigger for her family cutting ties with her. Sarah and Daniel were fired from Martinez Bank as declared at the hospital, and the two apparently broke up. Given how ugly their blame shifting was, it's only natural. After the police report was accepted, I heard rumors that Sarah was arrested. My mom's case isn't that major of an incident. So even if a police report was filed, it was unclear if the police would take action. Nevertheless, the reason it led to an arrest is because, appallingly, Sarah had frequently caused similar problematic behavior elsewhere. Complaining about unsatisfactory service at stores until she was satisfied, throwing tea at others, and so on. As police reports piled up, the police seemed to take action, unable to overlook it. Naturally, she was prosecuted and found guilty at trial. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison without suspension of execution. Sarah had boasted so proudly about being an elite, but now that this has happened, she can no longer be an elite. No one will see Sarah that way anymore. Fired from her job, dumped by her boyfriend, and abandoned by her family, who knows how Sarah will live after serving her sentence? I was curious, but I quickly stopped thinking about it. It's not my business. This time, I probably won't get involved with her ever again.
Welcome. Ms. Johnson, we've been expecting you.
Greeted by the cheerful staff's voice, we step inside the restaurant. Today, we've come back to that high-end restaurant to redo the 70th birthday celebration that was ruined that day. Of course, with a proper reservation. We went to various stores since morning, buying flowers for the occasion and repurchasing the presents that were drenched in alcohol. Apparently, the reason my mom was so angry that time wasn't because she got burned, but because our presents were ruined.
I'm so happy to be able to come eat with Jennifer again like this.
That celebration was ruined that day, so let's enjoy today even more than back then.
Hee, a lot happened that time, but since we get to enjoy both the seafood and meat courses as a result, let's consider it a good thing.
Last time was the seafood course, but today it's the meat course. Remembering that commotion still fills me with irritation, but hearing my mom's words, those complicated feelings quickly fade. I think she is truly amazing. Even emotional shifts that are difficult for me, she does them so easily like this. We toast in front of the dishes brought to us. That time, we celebrated before her birthday because our schedules weren't likely to align, but today is genuinely my mom's birthday. My mom, now 70, will retire as hospital director next year. It's often said that there's no retirement age for medical professions, but precisely because it's a job where people's lives and health are entrusted, my mom says mistakes are never allowed. That's why she wants to step down from the position of hospital director before her judgment declines with age, leading to a serious mistake, and entrust it to the next generation.
How about going to a trip after retiring? You should do lots of things you couldn't before due to lack of time. I bet there are plenty, right?
Oh, that's a good idea. I'll think about it. But you know, I'm more than happy enough as I am now. I was really devastated when I lost my husband, but thanks to you, Jennifer, I was able to recover. You are happy, and you cherish me like this, I'm truly happy. My mom, smiling as she says that, looked delighted and truly happy, just as she said. Seeing my mom like that, I start feeling happy too. One day, as I stepped outside to hang the laundry, I noticed that the sky had taken on a distinctly autumnal appearance. Thinking to myself that it might be another hot day, I glanced over towards the guest house. On the same property as my house, there's a guest house where my son Kevin, his wife Helen, and their son Eric live. Whenever Helen comes over to our house, she takes household items like toilet paper, detergent, and shampoo, and she also seems to be secretly taking money from my wallet. However, since I haven't caught her in the act, I have no proof and can't confront her about it. Our living expenses kept dwindling, so I decided to take on a part-time job. Of course, I tried talking to Kevin about what Helen was doing, but he wouldn't listen to me. So, we decided to have a discussion with my husband Paul, who comes home once a month from his job in another city, along with Kevin and Eric. Helen was supposed to join us later.
I told you that money has been disappearing from my wallet, and that's not the only thing.
Are you saying Helen did it? You must be joking. Paul then quietly placed his smartphone on the table, showing a video. It was footage from the security camera we had installed in our house. The video showed Helen in a bright corner of our living room, finding my wallet in my bag, taking out several bills, and then putting the wallet back into the bag. Kevin was stunned.
But I've been giving her enough money for our expenses.
Why? Even after all this, you still don't get it? My words hit Kevin hard. He stormed out of the house, ran to the guest house, and dragged Helen back. Helen turned pale as she watched the video. My name is Rebecca, a 60-year-old housewife. My husband Paul works in another city and comes home about once a month. We're both past the midpoint of our lives and would like to live peacefully, but it seems that's not possible. When Paul found out he had to work away from home, he confided in me with a slightly disappointed look.
Rebecca, I've been assigned to a new post, so I'll be living alone from next month. They've asked me to oversee the new branch and take care of the staff there.
Paul has always been a caring big brother figure at his company, and everyone looked up to him. He's not just supportive at work, but also at home. When Kevin was a newborn, Paul took the initiative to help with feeding and changing diapers. Even though he couldn't take parental leave, he spent weekends and summer holidays napping with Kevin, taking him to the park, and teaching him as he grew older. Seeing Paul unusually downcast was rare. Don't be so upset. You'll be back soon, right? I assumed he would be back in 2 to 3 months.
Well, I'm not sure how long it'll be. I'll be working in another state, so I won't be able to see you often. I'll only be able to come home about once a month, and I'm worried about you.
Why is he worried about me? I thought for a moment and then realized. I had a chronic illness and had just undergone surgery recently, so he was worried that something might happen to me. Don't worry. Kevin and his family are in the guest house, and I'll contact you if anything happens. On the same property as my house, there's an annex where Kevin, his wife Helen, and their son Eric live. Kevin got married 6 years ago and lived in an apartment for a couple of years, but due to the landlord's circumstances, they had to move out. They searched for other places, but Helen refused to accept any of them, eventually coming to ask if they could live with us. Paul was not keen on the idea and initially opposed it.
Kevin, you know Rebecca has a chronic illness. I don't want to burden her too much, so I'm against it.
We turned him down once, but when less than a month remained before they had to leave, Kevin came back looking quite desperate.
Dad, please, we won't cause any trouble. Just let us live in the guest house.
By the time this request came, Paul had changed his mind and agreed to let Kevin's family stay in the guest house. When I asked him why later, he said it was because he felt more secure knowing I wouldn't be alone. It's been about 3 years since then, and they show no sign of moving out, still living in the guest house. Not wanting to worry Paul, I tried to sound cheerful.
Don't worry. I'm recovering well after the surgery, and I'm taking my medication properly.
We should install a monitoring camera. The newer models are quite advanced, with temperature sensors to help prevent heat stroke and other features.
You're worrying too much.
I laughed, and we talked into the night. Later, Paul actually installed a monitoring camera and linked it to an app on his smartphone. I was surprised, but since it was placed high up, it didn't bother me, and I quickly got used to it. A week later, Paul left with a heavy heart, and now I live alone in a house that feels too spacious. However, I had something on my mind that I hadn't told Paul. It was about Kevin's wife, Helen. Even though she was supposed to be a housewife, she often left Eric at home and went out somewhere. I could understand going out for lunch with friends occasionally, but this happened quite frequently. Also, whenever she came over with Eric, she always took something from our house, which troubled me. "Rebecca, I'm taking some toilet paper." At first, it was just small things like that, so I didn't mind much. But it gradually escalated to items like detergent, shampoo, body soap, and even, on one occasion, plates. Though she returned the plates, it was still strange.
Helen, are you struggling so much financially that you can't afford to buy these things?
Huh? No, that's not it.
Then why are you taking things from the house?
I'm just trying to save money. With Eric around, we'll need a lot of money in the future, so I'm trying to save up now. So Rebecca, please think of it as helping out and overlook it. She said this nonchalantly, waving her hand as she left again. She always dressed fashionably, talked about going to the spa, and had her nails done. Was she really saving money? Kevin worked from early morning until late at night, and I hadn't heard of any financial difficulties. I wanted to confront her about her intentions, but I didn't want to be the meddling mother-in-law, so I stayed silent. During these days, my wallet started to mysteriously run out of money. I suspected Helen, but I had no proof. Since the money was taken without me noticing, I couldn't catch her in the act, and time just kept passing by. One day, I went outside to hang the laundry and saw that the sky had taken on the appearance of autumn. I thought it would be another hot day despite the lingering summer heat and glanced towards the guest house. Even after this, I never once saw Helen taking money. I wondered if it wasn't her after all, but I started hearing unfavorable rumors about Helen from various neighbors. They said they saw her dressed like she was going to a club or walking around with young men. I was skeptical. I knew she liked to dress fashionably, but I had only seen her in outfits you'd see in fashion magazines, and she didn't seem like the type to cheat. When she was at the guest house, she sometimes wore pajamas, so I couldn't imagine her partying around. However, the fact that people had seen her suggested that there might be a side of Helen I didn't know. Even as I kept an eye on things, my wallet continued to lose money. Running out of living expenses, I decided to get a part-time job until I could find proof. I told Paul it was for a change of pace, but he was very worried. I managed to get his approval on the condition that I wouldn't overdo it. Fortunately, I saw that the nearby supermarket was hiring part-time cashiers, so I contacted them and went for an interview. I had also consulted with Kevin just in case, and on the day before my first shift, I told him,
Kevin, I'm going to start working part-time next week.
"Why?"
You just got out of the hospital and must still be exhausted. It's only 3 days a week, so I'll be fine. Besides, about Helen.
I decided to talk to Kevin about Helen's behavior, hoping he might say something to her and we could make some progress.
What about Helen? Actually, she's been taking things like toilet paper and shampoo from our house recently. Is your household struggling financially?
Kevin was indignant.
No way. I provide money every month, and Helen handles the finances. She used to work in accounting, so she's good at managing our finances.
Is that so?
But it's true she's been taking things. Also, money from my wallet.
Money?
Are you saying Helen's been taking that too?
Kevin looked skeptical.
Yes. Money has been disappearing little by little from my wallet. She probably thinks I haven't noticed, but if this continues, it's going to be a problem. Could you talk to her about it?
Mom, are you losing it?
There's no way that's happening.
Kevin sighed deeply and didn't believe me, no matter what I said. The next day, I told Helen that I was going to start working part-time and that I wouldn't be able to watch Eric as often. This happened just as Helen came over to leave Eric with me. Helen frowned and complained.
What?
Then who's going to look after Eric?
Helen, let me be clear. You need to take care of your own child. Why do you always leave Eric with me and go off somewhere? Where do you go?
I spoke firmly, and Helen glared at me, annoyed. Fine, I understand. I won't ask you anymore. Without answering my question, she took Eric's hand and went back into the guest house. I felt a cold sweat down my back from the tension, but from that day on, only Eric would come over. Granny, play with me, I thought to myself.
Helen's out again.
And invited Eric inside, taking care of him. I hoped that starting my part-time job would make Helen reconsider her actions. With that faint hope, I spent the week. The first day of my part-time job arrived, and my shift started from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Having been a housewife for so long, I was nervous about working again. Although being a cashier seemed simple, there was a lot to learn and do. I clutched my notepad and pen and received training from a young employee. She was in her 20s, much more capable than I was, and she quickly explained how to handle point cards and operate the self-checkout. Her name tag had a gold badge that said, Customer Service Expert, and her demonstration of how to handle the register was excellent.
I need to make sure I remember this.
I reminded myself as I headed home and approached the gate. As I searched my bag for the house key, I saw Eric standing in front of the house. I was puzzled and quietly approached him. Not realizing my previous thoughts had vanished, I called out to him. Eric? What are you doing here? Hearing his name, Eric looked up. His eyes brimming with tears and his nose running as he stood there crying. I was startled and quickly took a tissue from my bag to wipe his tears and nose.
What's wrong?
Did something sad happen? He told me that he had been waiting here for me to come out all day. When I didn't come out, he asked his mother Helen, who told him that Granny had gone to work and wasn't home, which shocked him and made him cry.
Why did Granny have to leave? Is it because of my work that I can't play with Granny anymore?
Eric said, sniffling and trying his best to explain.
Work? What work do you have?
I asked. Eric replied, This, and handed me a piece of paper. I unfolded the paper, which was folded into quarters, and saw Helen's handwriting. Eric's job. Transfer money from Granny's wallet to Mom's wallet once a day. I was stunned by this instruction. What? I looked back and forth between the note and Eric's face, and in a trembling voice, I asked Eric.
Eric, did Mom tell you to do this?
Then, Eric answered. Yeah. Mom said it's my job and gave me this paper. My face tensed up, but I invited Eric inside and gave him some juice. He drank it happily, but I was in shock. I couldn't believe that Helen had instructed such a small child to steal money. Could this really be happening? I wasn't sure. How could this have happened without me noticing? I've always been with Eric, and at 5 years old, he shouldn't have had many opportunities to take money from my wallet. We were together from morning till night, so how did he manage to steal money? Suddenly, an idea came to my mind. That night, I called Paul and explained the situation.
Okay, I understand. I'm not doubting Eric, but I'll review the footage from the monitoring camera.
Paul listened carefully and said he'd check. 3 days later, Paul contacted me.
Rebecca? I found something alarming.
What?
My heart skipped a beat. It turned out that Eric was indeed the culprit, but even more shocking was that the footage showed Helen instructing Eric on how to take money from my wallet. She wasn't aware of the monitoring camera, but even so, to steal money in broad daylight was unthinkable.
I was planning to come back this weekend. This is wrong. We need to talk to Kevin and Helen.
Yes, we do.
I felt a heavy weight in my chest, but now that we knew the truth, we had to confront them and resolve this issue. The few days leading up to the weekend were filled with a dark cloud, but working part-time helped me focus on my tasks and temporarily forget the situation. The weekend arrived with a forecast predicting a direct hit from a hurricane, but fortunately, it veered west, leaving our area clear and sunny. However, despite the bright weather, a dark cloud hung over our household. Paul, intending to address the recent issue, left work 2 hours earlier than usual and drove home. He appeared slightly fatigued but also radiated a palpable anger, signaling that today might turn contentious. Upon arriving, Paul immediately walked over to the guest house and instructed Kevin and Helen to come to the main house urgently. However, only Kevin and Eric showed up. In the living room, Paul and I sat on one side of the table, facing Kevin and Eric on the other. Paul began.
Kevin, where is Helen? I told her to come as well.
She said she'd come later.
Kevin's response was hesitant, likely due to the tense atmosphere. The clinking of ice in a glass on the table seemed to mock the silence.
Well, I wanted to talk to her, specifically, but fine. Kevin, I've heard that Helen has been taking things from this house.
Kevin looked shocked.
Mom mentioned something like that before, but it's not like it happens often. Besides, Helen said she got those things from you, Mom.
She says I gave them to her, but I didn't do so willingly. She insisted on taking things, saying she needed to save for Eric's future.
Helen wouldn't do something like that.
And about the money missing from my wallet, too.
You can't be serious. Are you saying Helen has been stealing money? That's absurd.
Paul then quietly placed his smartphone on the table and displayed the screen.
This isn't a joke. We have footage showing Helen instructing Eric to take money and Eric actually doing it, all recorded on the monitoring camera I set up to watch over Rebecca due to her illness.
Kevin was stunned as he watched the footage. In the video, Helen could be seen rummaging through a bag in a bright corner of the living room, finding a wallet, taking out several bills, and then putting the wallet back in the bag. She showed the money to Eric, crouched down to talk to him, and explained that he should take this much money from Granny's wallet. Eric nodded vigorously, saying he understood, and Helen hugged him tightly. Kevin stared at the screen, speechless. Paul continued.
These recordings are from the camera I installed to monitor Rebecca. I never imagined it would capture something like this. We also have footage of Eric taking money from the wallet.
Paul operates his smartphone and shows a different video. Eric didn't know when the money had been taken, but after watching this video, he finally understood. When I stood up to take my medication for my chronic condition, Eric had rummaged through my bag and quickly taken money from my wallet. Since the time for taking medicine was fixed, even young Eric could easily figure out the timing.
How could this be? I trusted her. It's despicable to involve an innocent child in wrongdoing. You should be ashamed.
Paul, who usually doesn't get angry, said this with a voice full of rage at that moment. Kevin flinched, and Eric was also flustered by this stern attitude.
But I should have given you enough money for living expenses, so why?
"Why did you do this, Eric?" Eric answered, "Mom says her job is to give money to men, and she doesn't have enough." "To men?" "Yes. Mom always puts on pretty makeup and goes out somewhere, but I'm not allowed to go with her. So I stay at home with Granny." Kevin looked at Eric suspiciously. His face showed confusion, as if saying, "I don't understand what's going on. Could she be having an affair? Do you still not understand?" I said, prompting Kevin to rush out of the house in a fury. He stormed to the guest house and dragged Helen back with him, causing a commotion.
Ouch! Let go of me!
Helen screamed as Eric watched, on the verge of tears, unsure of what was happening.
Helen, what is going on? Explain yourself. Why did you steal money from Mom's wallet and even make Eric do it when I've given you enough for living expenses?" Kevin demanded.
Helen, startled, looked at Kevin, bewildered that he knew. "What are you talking about? Do you have any proof that I did such a thing?" Thinking there was no evidence, Helen spoke confidently. Kevin, however, pointed to Paul's smartphone on the table.
"This is the proof. You had Eric do it too. Where were you going when you left Eric with Rebecca? Were you cheating with another man?"
Helen's face turned pale as she saw the screen. Realizing she was caught, she fell to her knees and confessed, admitting she had been frequenting a male strip club, not having an affair.
"I'm sorry. At first, it was just for fun. Being stuck with Eric all day and the stress of having Rebecca living so close, I wanted to go out just once."
But once turned into twice, then 3 times, and she got increasingly hooked.
"I just wanted to have some fun too. For that, I needed money. I wanted to spend money on those men. I couldn't work because I had to take care of Eric, and the allowance you gave me wasn't enough. That doesn't justify stealing from Mom's wallet. That's theft."
"I'm sorry. I won't go anymore. I'll never go to that club again. I'll return all the money I took. Please forgive me." Helen pleaded with Kevin through tears, but Kevin, filled with rage, was unmoved.
"No. Absolutely not. We're getting a divorce. No."
She continued to cry and cling to him, but Kevin stood firm and later filed for divorce. I kept a record of the money that was taken, and I handed Helen a bill.
"What? This much?"
She seemed surprised, but couldn't deny it. She tried to negotiate for a lower amount, but I refused to budge and demanded the full amount.
"Helen, you should be grateful I'm not filing a police report. Repeated theft, even by a family member, would lead to your immediate arrest."
Upon hearing this, Helen fell silent, bit her lip, and left. Kevin, in the process of divorcing her, also filed a claim for damages. A colleague at his workplace who had recently divorced recommended a good lawyer. Thus, Helen had to repay not only me but also pay damages to Kevin. Astonishingly, even in such circumstances, she couldn't stop going to male strip clubs, and there were rumors she had accumulated $20,000 to $30,000 in debt. I couldn't understand what drove her to such extremes, but it seemed only a matter of time before she couldn't manage her finances due to excessive payments. As for me, since I no longer needed to work part-time, I quit the supermarket and spent my days relaxing at home. No one lived in the guest house anymore, but instead, Kevin and Eric moved to the second floor of the main house. Kevin gained custody of Eric and took him in. While Kevin was at work during the day, I continued to look after Eric, but I no longer worried about money being stolen. Eric would be old enough to start preschool next year. I wonder if Kevin has already completed the paperwork. I should ask him. I murmured to myself while making pancakes for lunch. Just then, Paul came home. Today was the day he returned from his solo assignment. I hadn't seen Paul in weeks since that day, but he entered the living room looking unusually cheerful and happy.
I'm home.
Welcome back. Lunch is ready.
Welcome back, Grandpa.
From now on, the four of us, Paul, Kevin, Eric, and I, would live together. I truly felt blessed with such a peaceful life. Although the summer heat still lingers, the season is about to change to autumn, and Paul, still putting all his effort into playing with the child, suggests, "How about we go apple picking during the next holiday?" Smiling at his enthusiasm and thinking he should consider his age, I went back to making another batch of pancakes for him.
I got pregnant with Richard's child.
What?
So please divorce him and leave. Please.
What are you saying out of the blue?
Please. My sister Sophia dropped this bombshell, then went on to demand a divorce. The shock of her being pregnant was one thing, but I never expected her to plead for a divorce. But if she thought I knew nothing, she was gravely mistaken. At this point, an idea struck me.
If you want the divorce so badly, I have conditions.
Conditions? They can't be that bad, so fine.
Really?
I taunted my sister. Sophia, ever the competitive one, showed a confident attitude. Just as I had planned. This won't be easy, you know. However, Sophia didn't realize. This condition would be a burden she'd carry for a lifetime. I took a deep breath, looked her straight in the eyes, and said firmly,
Divorce is fine, but you'll have to take care of the 3 daughters I've raised.
I don't get it. Why should I? They're your kids, right?
Technically, I'm not their biological mother. They're stepchildren. That's not it. Because those 3 kids. I knew the truth Richard and Sophia had been hiding all this time. Thinking about how I've raised these 3 daughters, the emotions surged. Given how things had turned out, Sophia would have to atone for all her sins. I was filled with an unprecedented level of hatred.
Don't say something so random.
Should I show you the evidence then?
Show me.
And thus, Sophia stepped into her own personal hell. My name is Isabella, a 43-year-old housewife. I met my husband, Richard, at our previous workplace. We were the same age and joined the company at the same time. I want to talk to you about something, so can we go out for a drink? If you're paying. Again? Fine.
You owe me for all the help I give you.
Initially, we were just colleagues and friends. I even gave Richard advice on his love life. When Richard went through a breakup, our bond deepened quickly. I'll help you next time. What are you saying? I did it because I wanted to, don't worry. Oh, by the way. At that time, I didn't have romantic feelings, but seeing Richard heartbroken, I realized I loved him. I acted quickly after that. Feeling a bit guilty, I confessed my feelings to Richard. It worked out, and we started dating. Time passed, and we married in our 2nd summer together.
Let's make this work.
Yeah, let's build a great family. Yes. It might be early, but I want 2 kids. Our relationship was strong, and I wasn't too worried about starting a new life. But I never imagined my family would interfere. The cause was my sister, Sophia.
What? It's no big deal. Give it to me. It's not fair for Isabella to have it. Not fair? I bought this myself, you can get your own. As my sister, it's natural for you to give it to me.
Saying this, Sophia would take my newly bought cosmetics without permission. Inviting Sophia to our new house was clearly a mistake. Sophia always wanted everything I had, even from childhood. This never changed, even as we grew up. Hold on a second. See you, Isabella. Next time, be careful not to lose something even more important. What do you mean? Well, why don't you figure it out yourself? Even though we've known each other since we were kids, I've only ever scolded her. Annoying as she is still my sister by blood. And such lenient thoughts would lead to an irreversible situation.
You did it.
Yeah.
We'll have a new family member soon, so we need to work harder.
For years after we got married, we had our first child. Because of this, I resigned and became a housewife. However, 6 months later, something devastating happened. I had been suffering from stomach pain since the morning, and it was so bad that I called an ambulance.
What does that mean?
I'm sorry, but you've had a miscarriage.
No way.
We did everything we could. I couldn't think of anything. I didn't even know how I got home. I couldn't figure out how to tell Richard. I'm home. Oh, welcome back.
What's with that face?
Yeah. Richard must have sensed my distress because he gently asked, "Take your time and tell me, okay?" His words made me feel safe, and I burst into tears, explaining what had happened today. Richard was shocked, but he told me it wasn't my fault. It'll be all right.
Thank you.
Let's just take it easy for now. After some time, we started trying for a baby again, but I still couldn't get pregnant. Further hospital tests revealed that I had a condition that made it difficult to conceive and prone to miscarriages. It felt like I was sinking deeper into a pit of despair. To make matters worse, a troublesome person started visiting frequently. "I'm sorry about your loss, Isabella." "Yeah. But don't worry, it's not the end yet." "I hope so. And, actually, I need to ask you a favor." Sophia never hesitates to ask me for things. Even though she knows my current situation, she doesn't care. Her seemingly concerned words are empty. "So, what's the favor?" "Oh, can you lend me some money?"
What?
"I'm in a bit of trouble, just a little will do." I thought it was too much trouble, so I handed her the $300 in my wallet. "Well, this should do. By the way, where's Richard?" "He went out to meet a friend." "Okay. Thanks. See you." With that, Sophia left. After this, she stopped coming to our house. Peaceful days followed. Then, Richard made a proposal. I was thinking, how about we adopt a child?
Adopt?
I was stunned by his sudden suggestion. Although we hadn't had a child, it didn't mean it was completely impossible. I think it might be better than betting on such a low chance.
You might be right.
Of course, we don't have to do it right away, but I'd like you to think about it. Oh, okay. I was very conflicted. I understood Richard's point, but I still couldn't give up on having our own child. In the end, I spent about a month thinking it through. I waited for Richard to come home and shared my thoughts about adopting a child.
What do you think?
I thought about it, and maybe you're right.
Even if there's no blood connection, the child will still be ours.
Yeah, you're right.
And I'll take care of all the paperwork.
Really? Thank you. Richard's eyes were filled with hope. Thus, Richard and I adopted a child. Her name was Emily, about 2 years old, and she was a very understanding and good child. Around the same time, Sophia started visiting us again. I had no idea where she had been or what she had been doing, but it seemed she was back to asking for things and money again. You adopted a child, didn't you? Since you couldn't have one of your own, it worked out well, right?
Yes. But how do you know about that?
Sophia looked uneasy.
Huh? Oh, I just happened to run into Richard the other day, and he mentioned it.
Sophia was fiddling with her earlobe, not looking at me at all. I knew. This was how Sophia acted when she was lying. Really? Where did you meet him?
Where was it again?
I'll ask Richard about it later then.
Does it even matter?
She clearly tried to change the subject. Her desperation made me think she had been in touch with Richard for a long time.
Oh, is this a limited edition item?
I got that for my birthday the other day.
Give it to me. Were you listening to me?
Of course I was. But it doesn't matter to me. I'm your sister, so it's fine, right? Just get another one.
Hey! Don't touch that.
I tried to take the makeup Sophia had grabbed from her. But she resisted, and we both fell to the floor. At that moment, Richard came home. What are you doing? This is. Are you okay?
Huh?
Richard went straight to Sophia without even glancing at me. How did this happen? Sophia gave me a sly smile. I just wanted to look at Isabella's makeup, but she told me not to touch it. I just wanted to see it.
What? What are you talking about? Did you really do that?
No, Maybe she thought I was going to steal it.
Did you really think that about Sophia?
Richard didn't listen to me and believed Sophia instead. In the end, the makeup Richard had given me as a gift ended up in Sophia's hands. And then I was sure. Richard and Sophia were much closer than I had thought. I was blamed, and Sophia left with a triumphant look on her face.
Don't ever do something like that again. But that was... I don't want to hear any excuses. No, really. It doesn't matter. Huh? Just get along with Sophia, okay?
Richard took Sophia's side without even listening to me. And then, an incident triggered my desire for revenge against Richard and Sophia. Our marriage deteriorated because of Sophia. We barely talked anymore, and the only thing that kept me going was Emily. Even at her young age, Emily seemed to worry about me and would stay by my side even when she had nothing specific to do.
Mom, are you okay?
Thank you, I'm fine.
Good.
But even Emily started to talk less. Sometimes she wouldn't even respond when I called out to her. And then I realized. Before Emily started acting distant, Sophia had been coming over. She might have said something unnecessary to Emily. That suspicion never went away. Years passed.
I'm home.
When I came home, there were unfamiliar shoes in the entrance. They were quite small, seemingly a child's shoes. They weren't Emily's. I had a bad feeling and rushed into the house. Welcome back.
Huh? Who's that kid?
A new member of our family.
What are you talking about?
For a moment, my mind went blank and I felt dizzy. Hey, are you okay?
Yeah. Can you explain what's going on? We adopted a new child. Why did you do that without telling me? Hey, don't raise your voice.
I was overwhelmed by feelings that words couldn't describe. I couldn't understand why he had done this.
Why? Well, I thought Emily might be lonely on her own. And Emily seems happy about it too.
Richard answered with a smile. But now that the child was here, we couldn't send them back. And so, our life began with mixed feelings. That alone would have been fine, but 2 years later, something else happened. By this time, I was already 40 years old.
No way!
After visiting my parents' home for the first time in a while and coming back, there was another unfamiliar child.
Is that child also adopted?
Yes, you're right. It was the third one. Just when we were getting used to living as a family of 4. Another addition to our family. While it sounds like a happy thing, the circumstances were not normal. Moreover, Richard was pleased with himself, thinking he was doing a good thing.
Let's get along from now on.
Thus, our new life with 5 people began. Watching the 3 daughters, they seemed like real sisters. Their faces even looked somewhat similar. This realization hit me again when Sophia visited. Long time no see, Isabella.
Yes, indeed.
I braced myself. Whenever she came over, it was usually to ask for something. But this time was different. Instead of asking me for something, she actively engaged with the girls. Her usual high-handed attitude was replaced with eyes full of affection. Oh, I see. I realized the source of the strange feeling I'd been having about the 3 daughters. They looked like Sophia. Their eyes and features were strikingly similar. What's wrong?
When I look at the girls, they remind me of Sophia.
Looking at them like this, they seem more like her children than yours. Richard showed a surprised expression, but he covered it up by making a snide remark to me. I just thought so when you mentioned it. Do you have a problem with that?
Not really.
Richard's reaction stayed in my mind. And Sophia started coming over every week, taking care of the girls in my place. 3 more years passed, and I was 43. As usual, Sophia was visiting and chatting with the girls. They all touched their earlobes.
Huh? I noticed they all have the same habit.
Really? Isn't that normal? Here, a thought crossed my mind. It wouldn't be strange if the children were Sophia's. A few days later, I couldn't stop thinking about it, as if I were under a curse. To resolve this, I decided to take action without telling anyone. What are you doing over there?
Oh, just cleaning.
Over there?
Yeah.
Well, okay, but hurry up and make dinner.
Yeah.
I was looking for my daughter's hair. It was absolutely necessary. No one should notice. And I also needed to get Sophia's hair. I had never wanted Sophia to come over as much as I did now.
Welcome.
Sophia came over the next weekend. You're in a good mood, aren't you?
Really? I feel the same as usual.
I managed to get Sophia's hair as well. It was the time I thought I was ready. Just to be sure, I decided to get Richard's hair too. Then I sent them to a research agency. The cost wasn't cheap, but this time it couldn't be helped. The results arrived after a month. Sophia came over looking different than usual. I have Richard's child.
What?
So please get a divorce and leave.
What are you saying out of the blue?
Please. I was shocked that she was pregnant, but I never expected her to ask for a divorce. But if she thought I knew nothing, she was gravely mistaken. At this point, an idea struck me.
If you want the divorce so badly, I have conditions.
Conditions? They can't be that bad, so fine.
Really?
I provoked Sophia. Sophia, not one to back down, acted confidently. This was exactly what I intended. There's no way I'll do that. But Sophia didn't understand. This condition would be something she would carry for the rest of her life. I took a deep breath, looked Sophia straight in the eye, and said, "Divorce is fine, but in return, take care of the 3 daughters we've raised."
I don't understand. Why would I? They're your children.
Technically, they aren't biologically mine. Well, they're adopted. That's not what I mean. The truth is, the 3 children are. Just then, Richard came home from work.
I'm home. What's going on?
Richard's reaction made me think how deceitful he was. Sophia says she's pregnant with your child.
Oh. Do you realize what you've done?
Well, Richard was visibly shaken. From his reaction, it seemed he didn't know Sophia was pregnant. Did you not know?
I just found out now. I didn't know she was pregnant.
Really? But whether Richard knew or not didn't matter to me. That wasn't the important part. So, about the 3 children, I know the truth. If you're going to say something, now is the time. I looked back and forth between Richard and Sophia. What do you know? Richard seemed to understand what I was about to say.
Wait a minute.
No need to wait, right? I'll just say it. The true parent of these 3 children is?
Huh? I don't know. I wasn't told.
Is that so? But that's a lie, isn't it? The real parent of the children is you, isn't it? I pointed at Sophia. What do they think raising these 3 daughters has been like? Given the circumstances, Sophia would have to atone for her actions, including what she had done so far. My heart was filled with more hatred than I had ever felt before.
Don't say random things.
Then, how about I show you some proof?
Show me.
And so, Sophia took a step into hell.
Wait a minute.
I brought out something I had kept in the bedroom drawer. I showed it to both of them. I had ordered a DNA test for the children and Sophia a while ago. The results showed that they were parent and child. How about this? There's no way you can talk your way out of this.
That's...
Sophia tried to make excuses even after seeing the evidence. But once it was scientifically proven, there was no escape for her. How could you think of something like this? Were you willing to give up your own daughters just to spite me? Then Sophia began to speak about what she had been holding in her heart all this time.
Of course. From a young age, Isabella was always the one getting praised, while I was constantly called a failure.
Indeed, Sophia was right. But that was only the opinion of shallow-minded adults who couldn't see beyond the surface. In reality, our parents never said anything like that. That was from unrelated people. Our family never said such things, not even once.
That's a lie.
Sophia seemed to recall something. When I was graduating from high school, Sophia had expressed a desire to go to college. A few years before that, I was also thinking about going to college. But financially, only one of us could afford to go. Our parents decided to prioritize me since I was the older sibling. Did you remember? I chose to get a job instead of going to college.
But why would you do that?
Because I knew you could do it if you tried. Your behavior got a bit out of hand because of the people around you. Sophia was capable, she just didn't apply herself.
So, I did all this out of misguided resentment. That can't be.
You were just running wild and misunderstood everything.
Then why didn't you tell me sooner?
Even if I told you the truth, you wouldn't have believed it. Sophia, losing her earlier confidence, fell silent. She probably didn't want to admit that everything she had done was due to a misunderstanding. That realization had led her astray. With Sophia already defeated, I needed to talk to Richard. Now it's your turn.
I didn't know, so it has nothing to do with me.
Richard tried to leave, but I grabbed his arm to stop him. Are you trying to run away?
That's not it.
Then sit down and listen. I made Richard sit on the sofa and continued. About the children, you're their father, aren't you?
What? How did you come to that conclusion?
You saw the exchange earlier, right? I got curious and had your hair tested. The results were as I expected.
Huh?
Did you think I wouldn't find out? Too bad. You might fool others, but it's too early to think you could fool me. Since Richard brought the children into our home, his behavior had been strange. More importantly, Sophia looked at the children with a mother's gaze. Even if I assumed all the children Sophia brought in were her own daughters, it was too much of a coincidence. I suspected Richard had some involvement, but I never thought he was the father. Do you have anything to say? Nothing, right? What do you plan to do now? Just as Sophia said, I'll divorce you. It's a clear case of infidelity, but I don't need any settlement money.
I see.
In exchange, you'll take full custody of the children.
All of them? All 3? Yes, all 3. Are you okay with that?
I always tried to raise them as if they were my real daughters. Even though they sometimes ignored me, they were still my precious girls. But my mind was made up.
Of course, I feel lonely, but it's better for them to live with their real parents. They'll be happier.
I had vowed to take revenge, so I couldn't do things halfway. The anger from being deceived for years couldn't be erased easily. Besides, I already have the divorce papers ready. Just for times like this. It was unexpected when Sophia told me she was pregnant, but I saw it as a chance.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. So hurry up and sign here, will you? And, of course, you don't have the option not to sign. So I made Richard sign the papers right then and there. I wanted to get the divorce papers and leave as soon as possible. Well, I'll make sure these get submitted.
Are you leaving?
Don't ask the obvious. I can't stay here anymore. You two can do whatever you like now. Just then, Sophia, who had been in despair moments before, spoke up.
Isabella, wait a minute. I'm sorry for everything.
I sighed. This is what you wanted, isn't it? I'm not involved anymore.
No way.
Isn't it?
After giving up the kids, now you want to be with Richard? That's too convenient. Don't worry, they're all your daughters now.
Sophia had gone so far as to put their own children in a facility just to trouble me. That's something no parent should do. She would face the consequences. I left the house with those words. It was raining outside, but my heart felt clear. After leaving, I headed to my parents' home. We hadn't been in touch much, but this time I had no choice. When I explained the situation, even my parents sighed. So, what are you going to do now?
For now, I'll move somewhere. And I need to find a job.
How about I ask Dad? I think he mentioned someone looking for help.
Really? That would be great.
All right, let's talk when he gets home. After that, I spent peaceful days at my parents' home. 3 days later, Richard contacted me. I was expecting it.
Hey, help me out.
What?
It's been a mess since you irresponsibly left.
What are you talking about? Those kids are yours, so deal with it.
They haven't warmed up to me since you left.
Sophia is with you, right?
Yeah, but
I couldn't tolerate his selfish behavior any longer.
Figure it out yourselves. Don't call me again.
I hung up and went to see my lawyer before submitting the divorce papers. I initially told Richard the first wouldn't ask for a settlement, but I decided to make him understand my position. After all, he deceived me and then had the nerve to complain, so I wouldn't hold back anymore. Then, I got a call from Sophia.
The police came by the other day.
I don't know anything about that.
It must have been you.
Well, you deserved it. Putting your own daughters in a facility was a stupid thing to do. The future awaiting Sophia was unimaginable. Thus, I began living alone. I got a job through Dad's introduction, and everything has just begun. I was alone, but filled with hope. After quitting his job post-marriage, Brian, who now only works a part-time job 3 days a week, keeps dumping household chores on me, despite my full-time job. To add insult to injury, he's stingy with living expenses and started ignoring me when I confronted him about using my credit card without permission. Hey, I'm at my limit. I complained after dinner one day, But Brian didn't even look at me and went upstairs to his study. Determined to talk it out, I was halfway up the stairs when I heard Brian's voice. He seemed to be on the phone with his mother, Zoe.
Mom? Lily is still acting all high and mighty. I'm fed up, so why not introduce me to some cute girl? It's fine, she's totally into me. She won't complain even if she finds out.
I felt like my breath had stopped. How much does this man look down on me? Asking his own mom to set him up with someone else, unforgivable. I bit my lip and whispered to myself, "Just you wait. I'll make you regret ever taking my feelings for granted." I'm Lily, a 34-year-old housewife. I work as a regular employee at a major company. 7 years ago, I met Brian when he joined the company right after graduating from college, and we became close as we worked on the same team. His slightly needy side was cute to me, and I was happy he relied on me, being older. After we started dating, I accepted Brian's proposal and we got married. Brian lost his dad in his teens, but I never got the impression he was a mama's boy, and we only saw Zoe at Christmas. Zoe lived a bit far away and never just dropped by, so Brian and I were having a peaceful married life. However, Brian's actions suddenly cast a shadow over everything.
We can live on your salary alone, right?
One day, Brian suddenly broached the subject after coming home from work.
Excuse me? I quit my job today.
I was shocked by Brian's nonchalant declaration. Without showing any remorse, Brian continued with a smile.
From tomorrow, it's all on you to work hard, Lily. Oh, and I'm counting on you for the housework too. I'll help out a bit.
I was speechless.
Wait a minute. You're telling me this after the fact? Yeah. It's my decision to make.
Brian had been working in a different department for a while. He didn't seem to be struggling with his job, but maybe he was stressed? Still, he could have at least consulted me before quitting. Trying not to show my disappointment, I asked, "So, you're becoming a house husband?"
I don't want to do housework all day. Then how about looking for a part-time job? I want you to contribute to our finances.
All right, I'll give you money for groceries and utilities. You take care of the rest of the payments. And I'd like an allowance of $1,000.
$1,000?
I exclaimed in surprise, to which Brian nonchalantly replied,
"It's cheaper than hiring a housekeeper."
His words bothered me. He must be planning to work within my tax allowance. I've never heard of someone working part-time, earning less than $10,000 a year, and getting a $1,000 monthly allowance. But I didn't want to argue, so I reluctantly agreed. Brian, with his charming smile, was very popular. Even when we got married.
Why would he marry someone older? There are plenty of prettier women out there.
Female colleagues were jealous. Brian must have been facing troubles I didn't know about. If job stress could make him sick, then changing jobs was the better option. I was willing to work more for that. Since he lived at home until we got married, it was understandable he wasn't good at housework. I hoped he would get better with time. But my hopes were quickly dashed. At first, he would rinse the dishes and put them in the dishwasher, even vacuum the house, but after 6 months, Brian completely stopped doing any housework. For instance, one day, after an early morning start in overtime, I came home tired to find breakfast dishes still in the sink, and a pot that only needed reheating was left in the fridge. "Sorry, I've been busy too. You know, looking for a better part-time job." Brian made an excuse while lounging on the sofa. The laundry was also wrinkled, left in the washing machine. Brian, who works a 3-hour part-time job 3 times a week, was off today.
I'm busy right now, Lily, can you make it?
I reluctantly asked Brian as I put the pot on the stove. Just like I said before, work is really hectic for me right now. So, I'd really appreciate it if you could take on a bit more of the household chores. Leaving for work at 6 a.m. and getting back at 8 p.m. doesn't leave much time for anything else. Then Brian frowned unpleasantly.
I do take out the trash and clean my own room. And I bring in the laundry when it starts to rain.
Yeah, and that helps. But preparing meals alone takes up all my time. I even make your lunch.
Don't get all high and mighty over that.
I stared at Brian with wide eyes. Brian twisted his face and spat out irritably.
Just because you earn a little, you're acting all superior. That's disgusting. You only got to be an assistant manager and earn more than me because of everyone else's support. Don't you understand that?
Leaving me speechless, Brian went upstairs with his mobile phone in hand and slammed the door of his study. Since then, Brian's selfish behavior became even more apparent. If I used the dryer because I couldn't rely on Brian, he would complain later.
I was planning to hang the laundry properly. You don't trust me, do you, Lily?
On another sunny day, trusting Brian and not using the dryer, I came home to find the laundry still in the washing machine. During such a weekend, while Brian was out, Zoe suddenly showed up. It takes an hour and a half by car from the in-laws' house, so we only visit together at Christmas. I remember being scolded by Zoe when Brian left the room during our pre-marriage meeting.
Marrying a woman 4 years older? Brian could have anyone he wanted, why choose you?
Knowing that Zoe didn't like me, I wished she would leave soon but still offered her slippers. Then, standing at the entrance, Zoe snapped at me.
What do you think you're doing, making Brian do all the work? Excuse me? Making Brian do the housework, you're a terrible wife. I knew we shouldn't have let him marry you.
I retorted, albeit confused. With all due respect, I work full-time too, so we're sharing the chores. Though recently, Brian hardly does anything. Zoe's eyes widened, and she yelled at me.
Of course you do, you're the woman. Listen, Brian is delicate and fragile. If he collapses because of you, I'll sue you.
Yelling one-sidedly, Zoe left. When Brian came back from shopping and I told him about Zoe's visit.
Aha.
He replied indifferently. I wish you wouldn't discuss our private matters with Mom. I wanted to argue, but it felt like complaining, so I ended up not saying anything to Brian.
I'm tired today. I'm busy too.
Brian started using excuses like these to dump all the household chores on me and then caused an even bigger problem. When I tried to use my credit card at the grocery store on the way home from work, the payment was inexplicably declined. Shocked, I checked the app and found the card maxed out with charges I didn't recognize. Thinking it was a mistake, I contacted the credit card company and found out Brian had racked up nearly $10,000 in game charges and brand clothing purchases. He remembered the PIN I gave him when we bought an appliance and used it without permission. I couldn't overlook this and confronted Brian as soon as I got home.
Why are you using my credit card without asking? You have your own, don't you? $1,000 a month isn't nearly enough. Then maybe you should work more? It's a waste to spend all your time playing games at home.
Brian glared at me with a terrifying look. I braced for a yelling, but he just clicked his tongue and left the living room. His footsteps were heavy as he went upstairs, slammed the door to his study, and didn't come out for the rest of the evening. And from the next morning, he started ignoring me.
Good morning. I'm off.
No matter what I said, Brian would not even glance at me, sitting on the sofa and fiddling with his mobile phone. When I rushed to make and serve dinner, he would eat while laughing at videos on his phone, leaving his dirty dishes on the table before going to take a shower. And so, Brian would not make eye contact with me, ignoring any attempt at conversation. Of course, he never initiated any conversation with me either, acting as if I had suddenly become invisible. I had a plan I wanted to discuss, but under these circumstances, I couldn't bring it up. Then came the payday for Brian's part-time job. As usual, I put the $1,000 allowance in an envelope and handed it to him. Brian snatched it away and started to leave.
Hey, can you give me the $700 for groceries and utilities?
I called out to his back, but he went upstairs as if he hadn't heard me at all. I felt like holding my head in despair. With the rent, utilities, taxes for both of us, insurance, and communication costs all on me, life gets pretty tough without that $700. But since Brian seemed unwilling to give it, I reluctantly paid it out of my own savings and allowance. As the days of being ignored by Brian continued, I found myself overwhelmed with a heavy mood all day long. By evening, I'd be engulfed in gloom, seriously not wanting to go home. I'd kill time in restaurants or grocery stores after work, even staying in business hotels. But in the end, running away from the problem solved nothing. If Brian's mood improved, we might not be lovey-dovey, but at least we could have normal conversations. Maybe when I get home today, he'll respond as if nothing happened. Though it didn't happen tonight, maybe when we wake up, he'll say, "Good morning," with a smile. Holding on to that hope, I was ignored for 3 months, until my body reached its limit. I could hardly eat, losing 8 pounds. Brian just laughed and scrolled through his phone, leaving his finished plate on the table and moving to the sofa, seemingly oblivious to me eating oatmeal with a pale face. I put down my spoon, stood up, and went to Brian with a voice so faint it might disappear. "Hey, I'm at my limit." Brian seemed annoyed by me, stood up from the sofa, and went upstairs to his study. I slowly rinsed the dishes, loaded the dishwasher, wiped my hands, turned it on, and left the kitchen. This isn't right. I need to talk to Brian. Tomorrow's my day off, so it's a good chance to talk without worrying about time. Halfway up the stairs, I heard Brian's elated voice. He seemed to be on the phone with Zoe.
Mom, Lily is still acting all high and mighty. I'm so fed up. Can you introduce me to someone cute? It's okay, she's totally into me. She won't complain even if she finds out.
My breath almost stopped. How much does this man look down on me? Asking his own mom to set him up with someone else, unforgivable. I bit my lip and muttered in my heart, "Just you wait. I'll make you regret trampling on my feelings." My feelings for Brian cooled instantly, and I put into action a plan I had been considering for a while. I waited until Brian was asleep, took only my ID, and left the house. I stayed in a hotel that night, and in the morning, I contacted a real estate agent saying,
"I want to move in earlier."
They agreed readily. After sorting out the gas, electricity, and water, I returned home while Brian was at his part-time job, and had the movers take my things to the new place. The apartment we lived in was a new designer apartment costing $1,500 in rent alone. I would have been happy with a cheaper place, but Brian insisted. So, when Brian quit his full-time job, I started looking for a cheaper, used apartment. I had planned to discuss it with Brian, but since he started ignoring me, I went to viewings alone and prepared to move as soon as his mood improved. But after hearing yesterday's conversation, I had no intention of telling Brian or Zoe where I moved. I decided to divorce and live on my own. Brian initially ignored the fact that I had left the house and didn't contact me at all. But after a month, he started calling my mobile phone incessantly, day and night. My message inbox was filled with Brian's desperate messages. "Lily, where are you? It's terrible to just leave like that. I got a notice that the rent couldn't be withdrawn. It's supposed to come out of our account, right? Did you forget to deposit? Deposit the money immediately. I'm getting reminders for the utilities, mobile phone bills, and even from the car insurance company. Put some money in, quickly. By the way, where's my $1,000 allowance?"
It's your choice to leave, but it's a problem if you don't pay for things. It's common sense for the one with money to pay, right?
How am I supposed to live on $800 a month? Don't ignore me. Brian was the one who ignored me first. I was just doing the same thing he did, but why is he so angry? And yet, no apology, just selfish demands. While I was dumbfounded reading the messages, Zoe called. I didn't want to answer, but ignoring her would only cause more trouble, so I reluctantly pressed the talk button. "Hello?"
Seriously, Lily. Running away from home and leaving Brian behind, what are you thinking? Acting on your own despite being his wife. Come back right now.
I sighed and calmly retorted. "I'm not going back to that house."
Huh? You plan to abandon your duties as a wife? Who's going to take care of Brian? Brian is 30, not a toddler. He can take care of himself. If you're so concerned, maybe you should move in and take care of him? My word. The one who really acted selfishly was him.
I explained with restrained anger and in a calm voice.
He quit his job to work part-time 3 days a week. His salary dropped, and even though I only asked for help with groceries and utilities, I couldn't even get that. Then he started using my credit card without permission, and when I confronted him, he began ignoring me. That's why I left.
Zoe fell silent all of a sudden. After a while, she muttered, confused.
Wait, he quit his job? The major company he was so proud to get into to please his mom? Yes. He quit suddenly one day without any discussion, saying we could live on my salary alone. Sure, I earn a decent wage because I'm his supervisor. But it was shocking when he quit out of the blue.
Well, I suppose. Zoe sounded baffled.
So, for the past year, Brian has been living off my salary. And he wouldn't even do the household chores. If you don't believe me, I can forward you the messages from Brian.
It seemed Zoe had no idea Brian had quit his job. When I sent Zoe the message Brian had recently sent me, she explained in a soft voice. Brian has been consulting with me frequently.
What about?
Well, he said he's working hard, even doing overtime and working on holidays, but you hardly work because you're tired and neglects the housework. He said that you're living off his salary, yet you act all high and mighty, and that he's fed up and wants to have fun with a cute girl to relieve stress. That's what he told me.
That's the complete opposite of the truth.
I was utterly dismayed by Brian's lies, even to Zoe. How much more can he disrespect his life? He probably thinks Zoe will scold him and then he'll just come back home.
First off, I've never heard of a mom looking for affair partners for her son. What are you thinking, Zoe?
I pressed Zoe with a stern tone, and she started making excuses. Well, he says married life is tough, and he's venting. If he gets sick from stress, it'd be terrible. If matching him with a young girl makes him happy, it's a small price to pay.
I couldn't get any living expenses, and after being ignored for 3 months, I was the one who nearly got sick. Besides, that's disrespectful to any woman you introduce him to.
Well, handsome Brian is popular, so even though he's married, there are surely women who'd want to date him. Well, if he were still working at that company, that is. That's not the problem, I thought bitterly. It's no wonder talking to Zoe was getting nowhere, like mother, like son.
It seems divorce is the only option.
Divorce? It doesn't have to come to that. He's probably regretting it by now.
Zoe suddenly started panicking. She cares most about appearances. She must want to avoid her successful, good-looking son getting divorced at all costs. I made it clear.
Regretting? How? I'm not his ATM. It's best if he divorces me, then he can play around and spend money however he likes. That's... Lily, can't you reconsider? He needs you.
Zoe pleaded, but I coldly informed her.
Brian seems likely to drag out the divorce, so I'll be hiring a lawyer. Please direct any further communication through them. I'll be seeking compensation for the ignored period and the unpaid living expenses, as well as the unauthorized credit card charges.
Can Brian even afford to pay that?
Zoe muttered as if it were someone else's problem.
If the son can't pay, then the parents will have to. What? That's why I'm asking you to let Brian know I want a divorce. I'm counting on you. Lily, please, reconsider.
I hung up without listening to the rest of Zoe's plea. The next day, I called a lawyer to discuss the divorce, secured an appointment for consultation, and felt a bit relieved. While enjoying a week of paid leave in my new place and unpacking, my mobile phone signaled a message. I wanted to block Brian and Zoe's contacts, but until the divorce was finalized, there might be a need to communicate. So, I left their contacts unblocked, without setting them to reject calls. I realized it was a mistakenly sent message. It appeared Zoe, not adept with mobile phones, had accidentally posted in the family group chat thinking it was a message to Brian personally. I decided to read it as well since it was shared. Brian, this isn't what we talked about. I was humiliated.
What's wrong?
You quit your job to work part-time 3 days a week? There was a pause.
Did you hear that from Lily?
Yes. Living off Lily's salary? It's shameful for a man to earn less than a woman.
Mom, don't say such outdated things. That's why I kept it a secret.
Brian quickly retorts. Well, nowadays there's something called a house husband, so if you were working properly, that would be fine. But working only 3 days without doing any housework and still acting all high and mighty? Anyone would want a divorce, not just Lily. Surprisingly, Zoe was on my side. likely disappointed in Brian.
Stop pestering me. I won't divorce. She's in love with me and will come back regretting it soon.
I couldn't help but scoff. I was stunned. Still saying such things. Where does his confidence that his wife wouldn't despise him no matter how badly he treated her come from?
What happened to introducing me to a young and cute girl? That's off the table. Why? I was looking forward to it. Do you even understand your situation? No girl wants to get close to a 30-year-old man living off his wife's salary and working part-time.
I burst out laughing, imagining Zoe's exasperated face.
Someone will be out there. You know I've always been popular, Mom.
If you were still employed at a prestigious company and a university graduate, there might be girls willing to date you, hoping for more, even if it's an affair. But not the current you.
Really?
Brian's response was ever so nonchalant against Zoe's anger.
You can still make it. Go back to working at a big company like before.
No, it's bothersome. Living off Lily's salary and lazing around is much easier.
Brian's carefree admission was appalling.
That's not how it works. Lily is planning to divorce you and claim compensation, including the credit card charges. I don't have that kind of money. If a bill comes, you'll pay, right? You have Dad's inheritance. You'd be happy to use it for your beloved son, right?
Then Zoe's replies stopped.
Mom? Hey, we're not done talking. Respond, please.
After a pause, the message resumed.
Why aren't you picking up the phone? Don't ignore me.
Zoe had blocked Brian. While pondering this, Brian called me. Ignoring it led to a voicemail message. He rambled on in several messages.
Mom has disowned me. Lily, you wouldn't abandon me, would you? It's okay you left. Come back home. You're not serious about divorce, are you? You're just sulking, right? Fine, I'll agree to a divorce. I guess I was partly at fault. But I can't pay the compensation or the credit card charges. I just can't afford it.
Anyway, keep paying the rent and taxes as usual. Your husband is in trouble. You earn enough to help out, right? And my allowance too.
My astonishment surpassed anger. He probably still doesn't realize he's at fault. A few days later, Brian received a certified mail regarding the compensation and credit card repayment, and, finally understanding the situation and panicking, he sought legal advice.
I love Lily. She's just upset thinking I dislike her. If she comes back now, I'll forgive her.
Such nonsensical claims were made, but under legal advice, realizing I was serious, he turned pale. Despite his reluctance, the lawyer managed to settle the divorce after 6 months. Feeling refreshed, I blocked Brian and Zoe's contacts. Abandoned by Zoe, Brian was at a loss. Burdened with the $10,000 compensation, 3 months of unpaid living expenses, $10,000 for unauthorized credit card use, plus his own debts, of course he was. Brian, who had splurged on branded clothes using the allowance and my credit card, reluctantly sold his purchases for cash. Still short, he pleaded with the lawyer for a monthly payment arrangement. Procedures to seize his account if there was no payment were put in place. Unable to PAF for the rent without my support, Brian moved to an older apartment. He had no choice but to increase his part-time hours to make ends meet. An ex-colleague who spotted Brian mentioned he was so emaciated, they hardly recognized him. I hope this serves as a wake-up call for him to discard his spoiled attitude and embrace independence. Freed from Brian, my earnings no longer drained by him, and liberated from the misery of being ignored, I've recovered fully. As a result of working with more motivation than ever before, I was promoted from assistant manager to manager, and with an increased salary, I'm living busy yet fulfilling days. I aim to balance work and personal life for a meaningful life.